think being an entrepreneur adds in a few extra complications for your mental health. I think, for better or worse, it may affect mine. So in this video, I'm actually going to share some tips and some resources that I find useful and I really need to remind myself of right now that I hope you will find useful too. So if that's interesting to you, then stay tuned. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Emma Givens. I'm a brand messaging strategist, copywriting coach, and writing coach for entrepreneurs. So I'm going to start this video off super candid in that I am very overwhelmed right now. And I know all entrepreneurs, especially in your first couple years of entrepreneurship, it's very common. Not to say that it should be, and if you found a way for it not to be for you, then I am very, very happy for you. And yet I'm still working through finding that work-rest balance. And I heard that phrase from Instagram Bombayded Brooklyn, so I can't claim credit for it, but I love work-rest balance as opposed to work-life balance because entrepreneurship is a big part of my life. I like the work I do. You know, I'm really proud to be an entrepreneur and to be writing for a living and to have a small team and all of that. It's part of my life. So I feel work-rest and that kind of quiet, introverted, in my case, time that I need is the thing that kind of gets pushed to the side because of lots of competing demands. It's so normal. And like I said, I'm trying to practice setting boundaries to figure out exactly how much I can take on. And then there are things like what happened to me this month as I filmed this in August 2021, where things just seem to fall out of the sky that you could never ever have expected. And other people testing your boundaries, so you have to practice setting them or create new ones that you never even realized before. It's, I think, part of the process, and that's why I kind of see entrepreneurship as a bit of a boot camp in personal development. And for better or worse, you know, it means that I fully expect to be a sage by the time I am in my 40s, because now in my late 20s, I am practicing all of these important life skills, you know, around relationship building, around taking care of yourself, all that kind of good stuff that can come out of it. And then there are also, I think, when you grow fast as an entrepreneur, there are highs and then there are, let's say, peaks and valleys. And this last month was kind of a bit of both, but there was just no middle ground, right? Like it was really high on a few fronts, like having an awesome team and bringing in a couple of really great clients and really strong revenue. And at the same time, I also ran into some client relationships that just were not meant to be, that had to be offboarded. I won't go into too much, but there was some definite, intense, unexpected, like I said, kind of falls out of the sky, things you could never plan for that happened. So peaks and valleys to the extreme as an entrepreneur. And like I said, I don't think it always has to be that, and it may not be, and I honestly hope it's probably not for you. And at the same time, I know that I am not alone in this. So I decided that I'm going to come to you live in the midst of an intense mental health period for myself as an entrepreneur to share with you the things that are keeping me grounded and things that I'm also working on. So you know, you're not alone, and we can practice some of these tools, resources, skills together. All right, so here's my first point that I want to bring up, and this is something that I think if you have someone to talk to, whether it's a therapist or a coach, someone who is both compassionate and can also be a little bit more objective than you, it's going to help a lot. But the first point is to understand what the real triggers are for your overwhelm in entrepreneurship. If you know that your mental health is being impacted by your business, try and really look at what is it actually that's causing the problem. Maybe it's not, you know, the days of the week that you're working, because maybe Saturdays work super well for you and you don't want to work on Monday morning, something like that. Everybody's different. And there are often really big themes that come up that are actually underlying a lot of the problem. So if we can identify those core themes and make some serious changes to them, we can start to just remove some of the tension off of our plates. We can get good at managing it, and whenever possible, if we don't need to create more work for ourselves than we have to, then let's identify those things so we can just remove them altogether. So I'm going to give you some examples of what that might include. Too many hours spent on the wrong things that aren't in your zone of genius, that are just not the priorities. You know, that 80-20 Pareto principle, right? Where 20% of the work you do has 80% of the results. Well, maybe you're not actually spending the vast majority of your time on that 20% of meaningful work. And oftentimes having an objective point of view, or even just tracking your time solidly for 2 weeks and looking at, well, actually, when I break it down by the number of hours I truly spent, like put it into your calendar after you spent the time, maybe I'm spending way too much time on, creating. I found this once, even though I'm a writer, I was spending way too much time on blog posts. I just don't need that many to see results. And there's lots of other ways I engage with my ideal clients, whether it's through other forms of writing, like newsletters or sending direct emails to people who are already in my sphere. I also create YouTube videos. There's lots of other ways that I stay in touch with them. And sometimes they can be more personal than if I write a blog post. So they're still important, and I fully recommend that you have a blog for the majority of businesses out there. And that's something I can always help you with if that's something you're interested in. And at the same time, I really only needed to be doing maybe 1 to 2 blog posts a month. So the moment I realized, hey, I'm spending not a crazy amount of time on it, but just for the return, I was spending way too much time. So that is a really, really common one. And I think that it's worth reevaluating that every few months, maybe once a quarter. Really just track your time for a solid week to 2 weeks and see where you're spending too much time in the areas that aren't really the priorities that would give you the best results. Here's another one. You could have a lot of stress that actually is all coming back to just one unhealthy relationship, right? So if you have one really difficult, not aligned client, for whatever reason, they got in, maybe they just weren't what you were expecting, or they're going through something and they're kind of taking it out of you. I've been through both of those things. Not often. And I think that's really what this point is when you have one unhealthy client relationship, or perhaps a coach, but I see this happen more with clients, it can make you feel like everything is stressful. When actually, if I look at, I'm thinking of this particular time where I had one client relationship that was really, really, really difficult. And then I looked at all the other clients I had at the same time, whether it was done for you copywriting or writing coaching, consulting, all those things. I had a lot of other people who were awesome, had great relationships, and I could see how I was supporting them, and they were, really communicative, gave great feedback. We were working together. We were a team. I felt there was a lot of respect there. But then this one other relationship was just not healthy. Unhealthy communication coming from the client, changing targets that I just couldn't keep up with. These were things that I did my best to communicate and solve, but it was ultimately, I'm only half of the relationship. And when I realized that saying goodbye to that one relationship would just free up all of my emotional space that way again, while I had tens of other clients who were awesome and who we had great relationships with and who were a joy to come to work every day to support, you can see why I would suggest in that case identifying that one problem and removing it, moving on, saying that we're not quite aligned anymore, or I think at this stage in your business, this is what you need instead. It's okay for you as the business owner to sometimes let clients go when they're not a good fit. And then you can really focus on the people who are a great fit and who you're helping, and just make space for you to take in that next really great client. The third area could be excessive financial strain that is making it hard to continue on a daily basis and be really, really present with your work. So if you're really, really financially stressed out and then you're going into sales calls or trying to pitch for sales calls, that desperate energy, and it's not your fault, I'm not saying it in any way that it's your fault, like you're coming in with desperate energy. No, it's just, there is fear there. There is an awareness of the make or break nature of some of these calls, or at least that's how it feels, right? Even if you, according to somebody else's point of view, are really well off financially, and for you're not feeling good about it, then that strain can create incredible mental pressure. And to really look at, okay, is this where it's really coming from? There are lots of things you can do. I once, early in my business, had to make the decision to just accept that August was an exceptionally low period. I went from having a fair amount of clients for my first year of business to having just a complete dry spell, and was very, very stressed out about it, even though I had some leeway. So I made the decision to temporarily go back to something I was doing before. I took on a couple English classes part-time, and I did that for a couple months, even though things started to pick up really soon after that. It just took that little bit of stress off of me so that when I was doing my beloved work that I could really be present and focused and enjoy it. And it also, I think, in my opinion, helped me show up to sales calls that were starting to take off at that time with a little bit more relaxation and just less pressure on myself. And whether that's transmitted to them, I don't know, but I had a much, much healthier experience through it, taking that pressure off of myself. So you can, as a new entrepreneur, it's totally okay if you want to transition slowly into being an entrepreneur, right? You might want to stay so many hours at your previous job, or you might start being an entrepreneur and then realize, hey, I love this and it's taking a bit longer than I realized. So a couple options, you could get a sales coach. I did that too, and that made a massive difference in terms of being able to bring in more consistent income just for my business. You could also just, get a part-time job at Tim Hortons or Starbucks or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, especially if you're, maybe around my age and maybe you have a little bit more flexibility. Not quite as many responsibilities kind of weighing on you. So I'm just trying to give you some ideas to realize that if there is financial stress that's actually the root cause of a lot of the mental health strain that you're under at work, there are some creative ideas to support you with that do not necessarily mean giving up altogether or borrowing a ton of money. There's a lot of in-betweens, but the key first is just to figure out that is the underlying issue, if it is for you. All right, point 2 is just to check in with your basic bodily needs, because I find myself getting, and I still struggle with this to this day, I'm trying to get better at it, just so overwhelmed by work that my tendency is to just work straight through. So I kind of need to ask myself, have you had enough water? Have you eaten enough today? And have you eaten regularly enough? Did you remember your medicine or your vitamins, if that's something that you take on a daily basis? Have you moved today? Have you just walked around a little bit, or did you get up from your bed and go straight to your desk if you work from home? Other things could include just, have you been outside in the sunlight today or even yesterday or the day before? Because I literally, as I've managed this experience, and as someone who deals with anxiety, have barely left the house for several days at a time, and I know that weighs me down. And not just, I'm just saying, movement in the sense as well, just walking, but for sure, one of the first things that comes off of my list at all times is exercise, and I know that's having consequences on me. So that is one that to this day I'm still really, really working on. So check in with yourself, right? Your basic bodily needs are essential, and when we're dealing with mental health struggles, they can be some of the first things to go, despite how essential they are in keeping us well. So just ask yourself the question and see if you can work a little bit back in, right? The water is the simplest, quickest thing you can do. Just make sure that you're hydrated enough, and then you can move on to the next question and the next thing. Point 3, decide on your boundaries. And I don't mean that in the sense that you need to have rules for yourself that are really rigid. I suspect if you're, if you vibe with me, that you're more like me and are more likely to actually be excessively flexible with your boundaries. So I personally am not worried about being overly rigid at any point. I need strongly laid out boundaries so that I feel less decision fatigue trying to make case by case basis decisions. That's exhausting, and to be honest, it's just not sustainable. So having those clear rules for myself also just takes some of the pressure off me. Whether that is on your website saying these are some of the things we do and these are some of the things that we don't do, and I'm going to show you an example of that on someone's website in a second, but also having really clear terms in your contract. If there are things that matter to you, chat with your lawyer if you're at the point where you can actually have a conversation with someone and see if you can add those things in. Or just make sure that it's something that you stick to on your own. If you even have a piece of paper that says, I don't respond to texts from clients, then if that's not the method of communication, that's at all okay. Because it's not really one of mine. I've had people in done-for-you settings try to get away with it. So just decide, it's on a piece of paper for you, it's a fact, you're not going to break it for anybody who's a client, just don't do it. Redirect, show up somewhere else when it's an appropriate time and just stick to email if that's what it is. But just having those rules laid out for you can take the pressure off, because you're acting in integrity, because you're not changing the rules for every single person. And also if you can lean back on the contract or lean on the terms and conditions, wherever you have those things built in, it can just take some of the pressure off of you. And this isn't personal, this is a policy of mine. This is just what we do. All right, this I wanted to show you because I think this is an awesome way of setting boundaries in a really beautiful, positive way. So I'm going to narrate this a bit for you, just in case you're listening rather than watching. We're on the website of an awesome marketer called Kelly Deals. I've actually been doing her feminist social media course. And what I really think is awesome is, just like she has an about page on her website, like all the normal stuff, she also has this page called My Feminist Business Practices. And I think whatever you want to call yours, my business practices, my feminist business practices, I think is awesome. Values, that sort of thing, whatever you want to call it, but I think business practice is a good go-to. I think this is an awesome way of making sure that people know what you do stand for, what you're not okay with, what you believe in. I love this section. So Kelly here has, I believe that empowerment is a collective practice and a collective outcome. Empowerment is not when one exceptional woman gets financially successful, but an oppressive system stays in place. That's empower myth. Like, it's so super cool. It's very her. So just share what you believe in. I think that's a cool one. I also really love how after saying what she believes, she says, here are a few of the ways I try to do that in my own life and business. So you can also just go straight to this, honestly, if you just wanted to have like our business practices as the headline, and you go straight to it. What I think is very cool here is she actually separates them by subject. So what we're looking at right now is hiring plus money. So the first bullet point is, I pay everyone, nanny, research assistant, etc., a minimum of a living wage, or at least $30 an hour. That's the floor. And I'm so glad she did this, because this was super exciting and empowering to me. I hired for a virtual assistant position not that long ago. Those price points can be all over the place, but some are just exceptionally low, and I would never ever have been comfortable with that. So considering, for what I was asking for support with, to start out with, like, that's what I decided. There's some so much lower than that. And $30 is very much on kind of the higher end of what a lot of virtual assistants get paid, at least right now as I'm filming this. Hopefully it gets better. So we just decided, yeah, you know what? That's going to be the floor for our business too. And it didn't have to be that, but that felt really good. Kelly is also in Canada, so that plays a role. So she's really changing the culture by putting it out there like that, right? So then she also has a section for accessibility. And this is really amazing. I think some of her practices, I would definitely take a look at this if you want to go to kellydeals.com, but some of her practices will be more accessible even to the business owner than others, because I think having a very stable, successful business already, Kelly can make really, really beautiful ethical choices that I think sometimes can be more difficult if you don't have a lot of a financial kind of basis. For example, I know one thing that Kelly does is she sets just a rule for herself that there's no interest charge on her courses. And at the same time, I think for newer business owners, you could make that choice, and in case someone defaults and doesn't finish completing their payment plan, it could be very helpful to have a fair but built-in amount of interest, basically, to cover for when that could potentially happen. It's just like, there's some things to consider, right? Like, Kelly's boundaries aren't necessarily the exact boundaries that you would want or I want, but I think it's a beautiful example. This is really cool. Solidarity, self-preservation, and culture making. So the first one she has there is, I have pledged not to speak at events or on podcasts where the speakers are or have been disproportionately white, and encouraged other leaders to do the same. Very, very cool. So then at the bottom, she kind of relates it to one of her freebies, but I think, a short page like this, I think is super, super helpful. One thing I'm thinking about putting on mine, whether I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put it up on the website or if I'm just going to have a list internally for myself and my business, is something like, because we've kind of learned from experience, and it's just not as clean and safe for everybody, that we're just not going to do service exchanges. And I think being able to put that up on the website of all places, just so it's a super easy fact, like, for both of our benefit, for our relationship, for just keeping things fair and clean, we don't do service exchanges. I'll pay you if I'm getting your service, and you'll pay me for getting my service, something like that. So this is something that's new to me. I haven't done it yet, but I really wanted to share it because it's something I believe I will be implementing ASAP. And I'm going to chat with my team a little bit about it too, to make sure we're all on board. But I think this kind of thing, whether internally facing or externally facing, can be such a relief. If this is just what you do, you don't have to develop decision fatigue, right? You can point people back to this and say, as per my website, or if it's in your contract, as per my contract. And not that you have to go to that easily every single time, you know? Sometimes people just forget or they didn't understand, but it's important to have it there because there are people who will just overstep your boundaries, right? So it just makes it a little easier for you, especially if you have any tendencies to people please or, you know, you find it challenging. So I think this is a beautiful practice that I would highly, highly recommend that you look into. Number 4 is actually a little bit like number 2, you know, where I was saying check in with yourself for your bodily needs. And for me, it really means that I'm not taking any breaks, like I just work straight through. Well, this one is to consciously build in those breaks. And the simplest way to start doing that is to use something like the Pomodoro technique, which is typically, if I remember right, you're working 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And just having those small but frequent breaks really helps your brain work through, right? Like building in those breaks are necessary because we can only stay focused for a certain amount of time. And you can tweak that to make it work for you. Maybe you just want to work for 20 minutes and then have 10 minutes off, or you want to work for 15 minutes and have 5 minutes off. You know, you can totally tweak it. There's a lot of tweaked versions on places like YouTube, right? Where you can just, and they sometimes will have music built into them too. So that way, if you want to pop on a Pomodoro technique music video, you know, it plays it for you and it'll give you like a beep warning when it's time for your 5-minute break. So I'm actually going to drop in the description box a couple that I find really, really helpful. And you can take your pick and see if that works for you. It also just makes it like you don't have to keep track if you pick a video or you go to a website or something like that that tracks your time for you. It's just beep, oh, okay, I have to walk away now. And maybe make a promise to yourself that when it's time to take that 5-minute break, you stand up and you just, you know, walk to the other end of your house, or, you know, you walk down and outside and then back up. That sort of thing can really, really make a difference over the course of a day. You just won't come away so exhausted, and the quality of your work, your productivity will actually massively improve. 5, it's okay to make a different choice. We kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but, you know, if full-time entrepreneurship doesn't fit you anymore, and it did, like it's totally okay to make a different choice. And I'm 27 as I'm filming this, and I just don't know what the future is going to hold. You know, if I think about myself 10 years from now, I'm not sure what my business will look like, or like I'm just so open to whatever the future holds. And just remember that no matter what decision you make, it's just about what's right for you. And there is no right or wrong. There's no failure involved. You've put so much into being an entrepreneur that should you make a different choice, or you decide you want to do entrepreneurship part-time and have a part-time job the other half of the time. I know a few people who do that and are actually way happier, right? Like there's some benefits that can come from that. That's all totally okay. There's no right or wrong way to be an entrepreneur. There's just the right or wrong way for you personally to be an entrepreneur, to be happy. So just be willing to change your mind about what you're supposed to be doing. And finally, make time for the just because joys of your life. So things that are fun just for the sake of being fun, right? So I, for example, at this point, don't always have my full weekends off, right? Sometimes I film YouTube videos on the weekend because I like to batch like 4 at a time typically. Or there's just an exceptionally big client writing project, and the simplest way for me to stay focused is to choose to work through on a Saturday. Like I'm okay with some of those decisions at this point. But at the same time, at some point in the week, whether it's on a Sunday afternoon or a Wednesday night, I need quiet time just for me, doing the things that I think are just fun because they're fun. Like there's no other reason. So for example, reading a book that has nothing to do with business. Or something I've really gotten into recently is learning a little bit about tarot cards, because I just find it super fun and self-reflective and just really helps me get in touch with what matters to me. Plus the set that I have that I've started with, which I think is not recommended to start with. You're supposed to start with like the classic Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But I just really love this magical dogs tarot, and it just makes me happy. They're so cute and I feel so connected to myself. I also have this book that gives me some journal prompts. Now, the majority of the book is not about this, but I found when I got to the time of the year, because this book goes through the whole year and some different like practices you can have for yourself through the different seasons. And when I got to, I think it was July of this year, it had a few where you just get to know tarot, and I found it so fun. It was just fun for the sake of it for me, right? Like I don't use it in my business for sure. It's just about me and getting to know myself better. So there's all sorts of examples of that. Maybe you like to draw in adult coloring books. I do that sometimes too. I have some frozen ones that actually let you put stickers in it too. Like things that just don't have to make any sense, but you just thoroughly enjoy. It's valid in and of itself, and it's important. It's important to have fun. It's just, that's the way it is. And yet I think it can get pushed down to the bottom of your list because this world is so obsessed with productivity, and there's a whole lot behind that. But suffice it to say that your rest time, your personal time, is critically important for your quality of life, and also, honestly, if you want to be a good business owner. You can't pour from an empty cup. Let's leave it to that. All right, that brings this video to a close. I know I'm actually kind of feeling better after filming this video, just reminding myself there are so many different resources that I have, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting super clear and actually writing down my boundaries. Now, I've been doing a program with one of my friends whose name is Pyle Berry. I'll drop her website in the description box below. And one of the exercises she just kind of threw out there for us was to write our boundaries, but also write down why they matter, so that it's really tied into that kind of more resonant, emotional, like values-based decision making that actually sticks with us long term. So I think I might do it that way. And then if I find it useful to, pop up some of those boundaries about the way I work on my website, I might do that. I think I can do whatever I want and then change my mind. So do the same thing, whether I've gotten to some of your favorite resources for your mental health in this video, or there are some that you could leave, in the comments below that might help others. Just go for what is feeling supportive to you right now. There's no right or wrong way. As long as it is overall helping you, it's an adaptive technique, then I think it's totally, totally valid. You don't have to be working all the time, no matter what difficult clients might say, no matter what that outside pressure is. It's just about being the entrepreneur that you want to be, the human you want to be. And I'm going to be practicing that right along with you. Everything's going to be okay. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today on this latest video about mental health on the Emma Givens YouTube channel. If you're interested in more videos about mental health as well as entrepreneurship in general, copywriting and content marketing, then please consider subscribing and hit the little notification bell so that you never miss a video. I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday, and I hope that you take some time for yourself and we both feel a little bit more relaxed the next time we tune in. Thanks. I will talk to you soon.